behind us to win the American Football Conference's North Division, and it is very, very tight on the Baltimore Ravens. Open plus 140, now plus 150, or open plus 150, I should say, now plus 140, excuse me, to win the AFC North, plus 170 on Cincinnati. The Steelers at 5-1, and then Cleveland bringing up the rear at 6-1. So very interesting numbers right out of the gate here in this division. I don't think Cleveland should be longer than Pittsburgh. I know I didn't know Frank was in the back on this, but Cleveland 6-1, the long shot. The Ravens, here are the favorites. We start with them right now. Alex White at plus 140 in the division, and their offseason was tumultuous, to say the very least, in the way of player movement, coaches movement as well. Of course, Mike Macdonald, now the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, so replacing him with Zach Orr, who takes over as the defensive coordinator. Todd Monken, though, with a second season under his belt now, back in the NFL after being in Georgia and, of course, previously with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Looking at the additions, they do add Derrick Henry, who seemingly should fit very nicely with the style of play that Baltimore wants to do. Eddie Jackson signed earlier this week, help out that secondary. Josh Jones on the offensive line brought in, but now, Alex, there are so many losses on this team. We could only fit 4 on our screen. Patrick Queen goes in division, shockingly enough. Of course, Roquan Smith being in Baltimore makes it hurt a little bit less, but kind of jarring to see a guy go from Baltimore to Pittsburgh. And he claimed during the offseason took less money in Pittsburgh. Yeah, okay, sure. Whatever you want to say there. But, Alex, 3 names that casual football fans may gloss over. I put them on there because that's 3/5 of the offensive line that they're replacing. Replacing John Simpson and Morgan Moses, who both went to the Jets. Kevin Zeitzler, of course, great career up there in Baltimore, now in Detroit. Tyus Bowser out now. Both the running backs, Gus Edwards out as well, along with J.K. Dobbins, who are both now L.A. Chargers. Geno Stone in the secondary. Devin Duvernay, guy who's used as a wide receiver and a kick returner. Alex, this is a lot of roster turnover for a team that had the best record in the NFL in the regular season last year.
It is, and I'm going to be honest, it is definitely a drop-off from those 3 linemen to their next guys up. Shout out to my grandpa because I am using his power ratings for those numbers. But with that being said, the Baltimore Orioles are very good at developing players. They have drafted 5 offensive linemen since 2021. All of them remain on the roster, so these guys will be playing for that starting spot. So there is some upside. They're very confident in their offensive line coach in Joe D to develop these players, who we know he's done a great job in the league. So a little bit nerve-wracking. I mean, they dropped down from probably the best O-line in this division to about the 3rd. Not very far off, though, close to being the 2nd. And you mentioned it, adding Derrick Henry to an already good run offense here. Ravens were first in rushing yards per game at 156.4. Derrick Henry, very good after contact in yards, so he can add even more there. But I am concerned a little bit with their passing game, 21st in passing yards. But with that being said, they passed 31st most passing attempts in the league. So they do just like to run on their run game, or rely on their run game a lot.
Well, when you're leading games, and Baltimore led every single game except for the AFC Championship game at one point, and actually, they were either tied or in the lead in the final 2 minutes of every single game until week 18 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that was the backup Ravens in that game. So they were an immensely successful regular season team, which has them as a regression candidate for me. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to regress out of the playoffs. Still very solid playoff team. If Jackson stays healthy, which I think is obviously an important deal. We saw it 2 years ago that they survived. That Tyler Huntley, by the way, no longer on the team. Also, Josh Johnson is the full-time backup, the wily veteran who's been in the league and almost on every single team at this rate. Baltimore's got a high win total, Alex White. They have 11. That's a high win total behind us. It is juiced to the under. They're 9-1 to win the Super Bowl. They're 5-1 to win the conference, as we said, plus 150 to win the North. He opened with Kansas City, but look at those first 5 weeks. At Kansas City, all right, they'll be favored. I think they'll torch Baltimore, or they'll torch the Raiders in Baltimore in week 2. Then they go at Dallas, Buffalo, at Cincinnati. That's a really difficult 4 out of the first 5 where you're trying to figure out a new offensive line. Defense is usually ahead of the offenses anyway. This is a very frightening first 5 games, especially when you bring up, look, even though I don't think the Raiders are going to be good, they have a good pass rush. We know Kansas City's defensive front with Chris Jones fully signed, excellent D front. Cowboys, Micah Parsons, arguably the best defensive end in the league. Buffalo, still good pass rushing wise. Cincinnati, Trey Hendrickson's a hard dude to block. They faced some good pass rushes those first 5 weeks. That could be a recipe for a slow start for Baltimore. They might be one of those, we've talked about in-season win totals going under with some of these teams. They may be a good over in-season win total after a tough start. I think 11's too high just to begin with. I like that under for the preseason, looking to go over a smaller number if they get off to a slow start.
Daily reminder, as we do here, to shop around and get the best number, because if you do like the under, Danny had just mentioned that there is some plus money out there. I wouldn't bet this under. I still think they're going to make the playoffs. I have them as the 4th best team in the National Football League. You brought up a lot of concerns offensively, but you do need to bring up defensively how good this team was. They were the best in the league. 12% of opponent drives resulted in touchdowns. First or second best red zone defense, depending on how you look at it, up there with Tennessee, who we know is going to have a drop-off now this year. 4th in opponent yards per game. 6th in opponent passing yards per game. So on the flip side, you're bringing up good points that their offense could struggle, but their defense will be ready to keep them in these games, even those first 5 tough ones.
Look, their defense a year ago, you brought it up. They were awesome. There is concern with the new coordinator. That's my biggest holdup more so than anything. And look, it is harder to face potential regression with a high-end defense, more so with an offensive. If they just kept the offensive line somewhat intact, all right, 11-6 makes a whole lot of sense. That's still, of all the things, even with the strength on that defense, and they still have an excellent defense, that offensive line scares me. That scares me so much with everything, with having to replace. I mean, Ronnie Stanley, we know, is still there, but dealt with a lot of injuries a year ago. Linderbaum has come in the league right away and has become a top 3 center in the league.
Yep.
It's a lot of pieces to change. They could win a lot of games 20-17. They could just say, hey, we're just going to grind it out. We're going to play possession ball on offense. Good luck trying to score in the mid-20s on us. They could do that. They could win 12 games doing that. I don't see them as a Super Bowl contender, though. I see them as that next group behind Kansas City and 2 teams we have not mentioned yet in our previews, and Houston. Those 4 teams, I think, are the first clip for the AFC this year. Then there's Baltimore. There's another team in this division. There's 2 teams in the AFC East. And then there's the rest of those AFC South contenders and the LA Chargers. I think Baltimore's in that group this year, not the elite tier, at least for me, Alex.
That's fine. And we're allowed to have different opinions there. I think they are definitely a Super Bowl contender. And on the note about the DC, I mean, it always makes me feel better when they are coming from within the organization. He's been there for 2 years as the Ravens inside linebackers coach. Now just steps up to take over for the entire defense. So, I mean, it's a tough division, and the AFC is pretty stacked in general. We've been talking about that. So nothing is easy, but the Ravens have a target on their back, almost like the Cowboys. They've been great in the regular season. They have to get it done in the playoffs. So that's fair. I mean, until they actually do it and make it to the Super Bowl, it's okay to have doubts about them.
There's going to be one team that won a division last year in the AFC that I think just flat out missed the playoffs. So Baltimore, Buffalo, Houston, Kansas City. One of those 4, I think, is just going to flat out miss the playoffs. I don't think it's Baltimore, but I wish I was getting a better price. I really wish I was getting over $3 on a no. That would, I think, would be considered. You could consider betting that. I don't think it's a good enough price to get there right now. But I really do believe one of those four, realistically, it won't be Kansas City who misses the playoffs. So Houston, Baltimore, Buffalo, one of those three is going to miss. It's just trying to figure out which one of those three do you like. I know people think Houston could regress even with Stroud in the second year. And Buffalo, this is the lowest Buffalo has been power rated going into a season in 3 years. So it's a very different game up there in Western New York. We'll get to the Bills next week.
Yeah. No, by far, I would say Buffalo is probably lowest on that list for me of those four you just mentioned.
We'll get to them next week. The AFC East will be interesting because I think we'll have, of all the divisions, that will be the one we differ on the most. I have a feeling. I think so because you got on me for picking chalk in every division leading into the East last two, and I do not have the favorite in either of these divisions winning the division. I can tell you that right now.